have these people who were quite tall and European-looking with reddish or blondish hair living in a region that today is, basically Chinese. Were they really such an anomaly? And the answer is no, they probably weren't.
The mummies seem to have far-flung ties. Europe, Mesopotamia, Siberia. The picture is expanding.
And walked into this room that was full of mummies, and I couldn't believe what I saw. The label said that they dated back to 1000 BC. They looked as fresh as though they had just been exhumed a week or two ago. From that moment forward, I was totally enchanted with the mummies.
The mummies are rarely made available for outside scrutiny. There is no uncertainty about the ethnic origins of the body buried in the main chamber. This perfectly preserved mummy was a woman of about 40.
It's a European type of person. So she's quite tall. Her nose is very high.
It was thought that these structures were built by the Chinese, but it now seems that the architects were known as the Tocharians. An oval face and reddish hair suggest European roots. His bronze earring and leather boots show his people were skilled artisans.
They were buried wearing their clothing. They wore boots with felts, stockings, caftans, trousers. So we know what they would have looked like when they were walking around and alive.
A people long dead and neglected have emerged to reclaim their place in history and radically change our view of a critical time. Laying the foundation for the Great Silk Road, the mummy people shaped the very future of civilization. The mummies are a unique and irreplaceable treasure. Though we now understand something of their role in history, scientific examination of their bodies will doubtless yield invaluable insights.
In South America, bodies of white people fitting the description of the Amazonians have been found, predating the so-called natives. In North America, the earliest fossils are of white people, the most famous of which is the Kennewick Man. The official story has changed several times in a desperate attempt to prevent further study and cover up the fact that he was a white man with white DNA and white bone structures.
Kennewick Man's age is nothing less than mind-boggling. He is over 9,000 years old, a man who lived before 7,000 BC, and one of the oldest and most complete Americans ever found. And yet, Kennewick Man is a puzzle. Scientists have long believed that the first and oldest Americans were Native Americans. But with his unusual features, Kennewick Man doesn't look like a Native American. Little did they know, this skull would take us thousands of years back in time and forever change our notion of who were the first Americans. The coroner brings the skull to forensic anthropologist Jim Chatters.
This is a first glance, so I don't have a sense of time on him. All I have is just his physical features to work with. The bone was in very good condition, good and sound, and didn't show a lot of weathering or dissolution or anything, so it appeared to be relatively young because of that. Very long, narrow brain case, fairly distinct brow, and a nose that just jumps off his face. Very pronounced nose. These are all characteristics more often see on Western Eurasian skeletons, European skeletons.
The skull appears European, not Native American.
These are all characteristics more often see on Western Eurasian skeletons, European skeletons.
The skull appears European, not Native American.
In the hands of forensic sculptor Sharon Long, it's the basis for a reconstruction of his face. She starts with depth markers that will determine the thickness of the facial tissue. Then, she builds the face, using techniques developed and tested in criminal forensic cases. The contours of the skull and specific muscle attachment points determine things like the shape of the mouth, the length and width of the nose, and the opening for the eye.
Where you tend to miss is in those features that are really individualizing. How many wrinkles the individual has, for instance, how much weight the person is carrying. Those kinds of features that are really specific. But the underlying contour and the underlying profile is defined by the shape of the skull.
Gradually, the face of the 9,400-year-old spirit caveman is revealed. But is it the face of an American Indian or someone else? Native Americans have always been considered close relatives of the so-called Mongoloid people of Northeast Asia. But the spirit caveman seems more Caucasoid, like the people of Europe, the Near East, or India, especially when compared with two other faces from the Nevada State Collection, Wizard's Beach Man and an 850-year-old Native American from Nevada.
We've noticed that in the overall profiles of the three faces, the degree of facial forwardness or prognathism varies quite a bit. Spirit caveman has virtually none, and that's one of the traits that has been referred to as Caucasoid. Wizard's Beach Man is kind of in between the two of them in that respect. And you can see the difference when you look at the later Native American, where his face sticks out from an up and down plane. Another characteristic that is surprising about the spirit caveman is his small bi-lobed or bifurcate chin. It's really quite pointed, and this is usually considered a Caucasoid trait. This is one of the traits the forensic anthropologists look for. It's also fairly small. The jaw is fairly small compared to the Native American, where it comes way down, very strong and square. This square jaw is one of the traits that is used to identify Native Americans.
If Spirit Caveman was the only early American with these features, he might be explained as simply an odd-looking Indian. But he's not the only one. A year and a half after Kennewick Man was taken away, Jim Chatters was still one of the few people who had ever seen the skeleton. He had constant calls from the media asking for a description, so he decided to try a facial reconstruction of his own. He started with the cast he'd made from the original skull.
Came out pretty good.
Yeah. Well, we'll bring this jowl down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
He and sculptor Tom McClellan tried a different technique, first building the underlying facial muscles and then applying the skin.
Yeah, how'd you like how I did with that cheekbone?
I see what you did. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's... Oh, yeah, he's looking pretty good now.
Yeah, yeah.
We can probably...
Very believable.
Let him go at this point.
The result bore a striking resemblance to British actor Patrick Stewart and caused a great deal of confusion. Were the first Americans really Europeans? Chatters described the face of Kennewick men as having Caucasoid traits. But the headline said, white. Some people blamed Chatters for stirring up racial conflict.
I was taken completely by surprise by the accusation of racializing an ancient skeleton for saying it was Caucasoid-like in characteristics. To me, that was a descriptive concept. It told people what it looked like.
The concept of race itself is controversial. Since there are no clearly defined boundaries between races, some think that race has no biological meaning at all, and to say that it does promotes racism.
It's become a political quest, and I think that's what's driving this to a great extent, is more modern-day political correctness than actual good science and good biology. There are differences between people. There are good historical reasons for those differences to exist. They tell a story about the history of those populations.
A mummy 3 times older than King Tut has been discovered in the Nevada desert. It was found in 1940, about 12 miles east of the town of Fallon. It's a discovery that could possibly unlock some of humankind's early mysteries. But tonight on Special Assignment, Channel 3's Vince Sterla tells us scientists may never get a chance to unlock those mysteries.
The excavation with your arms, your shoulders.
Outside of Fallon, Nevada, the curious have come to learn more about an ancient society of people who once called this cave home.
They discovered that the cave was underwater when it was formed 20,000 years ago until 7,000 years ago.
Not far from this cave, a mummy has been discovered. A mummy that may reveal the secrets of an even older society, one that dates back to the dawn of civilization.
This is extremely significant. This is unprecedented. We haven't had a find of this importance in my lifetime.
One thing that makes the mummy, known as the Spirit Caveman, so important are these fine hand-woven fabrics discovered at the burial site.
These textiles represent an extremely sophisticated ability to weave fabric by hand in a time where we didn't realize that people were doing that before.
The mummy was discovered tightly bound up in this matting. Out of respect for the dead, this photograph and this drawing are the only 2 pictures scientists will allow to be publicly displayed. Recent tests reveal that the mummy is 9,000 years old. That's 3 times older than any other mummy yet discovered in North America. That news has stunned archaeologists, because a mummy can tell scientists how people back then lived, what diseases they had, even what food they ate. Scientists can get that information by studying the mummy's DNA. That requires cutting a small piece of tissue from the body.
That it shouldn't be done.
And that, says Paiute Shoshone tribal leader Alvin Moyles, is desecrating the dead. In Moyles' case, maybe even a dead relative. So in your mind, this is an ancestor?
That is true.
The mummy was discovered near Paiute Shoshone land. Moyles believes the mummy's spiritual journey has been disturbed and that the spirit cannot find peace until the body has been properly reburied.
You are bothering the spirit. They're not to be bothered. They're put to rest, and that's where they should be left.
But scientists claim that the mummy is so old that he couldn't possibly be related to the Paiute Shoshones, that the mummy's tribe was here thousands and thousands of years before anybody else.
They do not appear similar to any living Native American in North America. They have receding cheekbones, narrow face, long face. Some Indians have some of those traits, but as a group, those are Caucasoid traits.
The 2 sides are now caught in a catch-22. One way to prove kinship is through the DNA test, but the tribe doesn't want that because it would require further disturbance of the remains.
I don't believe that the society today, majority of the people that have people buried in your culture would like to have your grandparents dug up because some scientist wants to come through and study it.
Whether or not scientists ever get to study the mummy is a matter for the U.S. government's Bureau of Land Management to decide.
The DNA evidence would be definitive for ruling out certain groups. You can't necessarily prove with it which group it was, but you can rule out contending parties.